If we hadn't built the freeways in the 60s here in Detroit, your economic base would have been greatly eroded. It's the same factor that you're facing today, that if you don't put in an integrated transportation system where people have choice, you're going to be relegated to the 20th century. The other challenge here in Detroit, of course, is that we've got to fix the existing we have to fix the existing roadways. That you've built the first or second largest, and I'm not quite certain yet because of the population decline in southeast Michigan, whether you're now first, because obviously the roadways that you've put in don't go away when you lose population, but the first or second most freeway lane miles per capita of any metropolitan area in the country. It's sort of a toss-up between Kansas City and you, as far as whether you are number one as far as transportation, as far as lane miles. Well, you've got to maintain that system. And it's going to be a major lift over the next few years. And so one of the things as far as your own transportation policies that need to be focused on is a fix-it-first approach. And if you don't believe me, just take the Southfield Freeway and look up when you're going under the overpasses. About 60% of them have that well-known, well-regarded structural support system known as plywood, keeping the Spalding concrete from dropping onto the roadway below. That is not a way to maintain a world-class roadway system. So one of the big questions that we in Urban Land have to face, that we in the real estate program deal with a great deal here at the university, but also I'm dealing with at the national level with an organization we call Locus, and Bernie Gleiberman's here. Bernie is on the steering committee of Locus. Bernie's up front. He's also on the steering committee of the real estate program here at the university. And that is how to pay for it. Because most of the studies that have come out within the last 2 years look at the transportation backlog that we have in this country, and the numbers are somewhere between $1.5 and $1.8 trillion over the next 5-6 years. And that ignores high-speed rail, which would probably double it. The gas tax raises about $250 billion over 6 years, and it's declining. So you can do the math. You can do the math, and you can understand that the gap is huge. And we obviously need to raise the gas tax. We obviously need to raise other taxes to pay for the transportation improvements. But we're not going to raise it enough to put in the necessary transportation improvements that we need in this country to drive the kind of development that the market wants. So what that means is that we have to learn from our ancestors. 100 years ago, you heard reference made earlier to the fact that there was, of course, a great rail transit system here in Detroit 100 years ago. That was the same situation in every metropolitan area, in fact, every small burg in this country. And do you know who built that transit system? We did. Real estate developers. 80% of them were built by developers. Not because developers love choo-choo trains, but it's because we wanted to get our customers to the farmland that we bought at $1 an acre, and we wanted to sell it for $1,000 per acre, using then current dollars. And in some cases, that might be today's dollars too, out on the fringe. So the developers basically took the profits they made off of the land development and subsidized the rail transit. Once they sold the land off, they dumped the rail system. They dumped it to the public sector took it over, turned them into buses, and the system basically collapsed of its own weight in most metropolitan areas, including Detroit. So we need to get back into this land use transportation connection. And we're going to be called upon to share a portion of our future profits to help amortize the debt that's going to be required to build the transportation system. Because if we don't do it, the Chinese are getting tired of doing it, and there's no other money to drive the kind of growth that we in real estate must face if we want to be competitive. So, Gail, back to you.
Well, Chris, I actually had a question for you to start off what I hope will be a conversation with everyone here in the room. And that is, when you think about this shift that you described between drivable suburban development, which is what we've done for 50 or 60 years, to walkable urban development, what are the economic development implications of that, not just for the real estate developer, but for the vitality of the communities involved?
The economy, as I say, 35 to 50% of the assets in this economy are related to the built environment. So think back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the golden era of real estate development in this country, as we were building the suburbs, as we were shifting out to this brand new product, drivable suburban. And it resulted in a boom that we've never seen before in this country. And what my research shows, and what I think a lot of people, certainly at Urban Land, believe, and a variety of other think tanks throughout this country, is that that same kind of boom will exist for real estate developers over the next 20, 30 years as we catch up with that pent-up demand for walkable urban development. Now that development is much more complex to do. It is much riskier to do. I kind of liken it to that we, in real estate over the last 50 years, we got really good at driving NASCAR. That if you know about NASCAR, you go straight or turn left. You never turn right. The cars are meant to turn left at 150, 180 miles per hour. Pretty significant skill set. We now have to learn how to fly fighter jets, where you go straight, right, left, achieve phenomenal heights, or crash and burn in seconds at 600 miles per hour. A fundamentally different skill set that we have to understand in taking advantage of the rail transit and taking advantage of building walkable urban communities where a lot more variables have to be brought together within walking distance. It's a much more complex thing to do. So as far as the impact on real estate, it is certainly, it's going to drive our future. As far as the impact on the economy, without real estate coming out of the ditch, this economy is not going to be moving. And of course, there are secondary consequences that ripple through the wood manufacturing processes, through the steel plants, through the appliance industries that will ripple through the economy that'll help drive us out of this. But without the infrastructure and a variety of other things, I'm not saying it's just the infrastructure. You can't just add the rail transit, add the bike lanes, add the walkable places, and poof, you got instant urbanity. There's a lot more to it. But without that, it's going to be tough to drive the kind of economic growth that the market wants. Let me go back and ask you a question. And we have 2 microphones up front. I don't think I can see any microphones in the back. So if you have a question, please come up. Given that you've been in that magical land, Oregon, where everybody must either drink the same potion or smoke the same weed, that you've been engaged in this integrated transportation planning for 35 years, which, by the way, the work that I'm doing at the federal level, we are copying from Oregon to make this part of the new federal transportation plan. So it's coming to a state near you, in all probability. Do you find real estate developers are supportive of this approach, or do they run yelling and screaming?
Well, we actually, over the 35 years, have been very fortunate to have a number of real estate developers who've really embraced the approach and have profited handsomely from it, both in fairly medium to small-sized communities like Bend and Central Oregon, which at the beginning of this probably had 10,000 people, now has probably 60 in the city, and it doubled its population between 1990 and 2000. And the leading real estate developer in Central Oregon has very much embraced this approach, acted accordingly, and the community, while it has its problems, shows real signs of this. And you have the same thing in larger cities where the mixed-use urban redevelopment, very dense, very transit-dependent, has definitely occurred. But by the same token, there are a lot of communities around the state of all sizes where real estate developers and the business community generally and a lot of the local